Hello, everybody. My name's Steve Philp, and I'm the Partnership Directors here at Portugal Pathways and your host for today's webinar. I'd like to welcome everyone to the webinar where we will delve into the intricate world of Golden Visa Residency by investment opportunities in Portugal, which offers obviously dual citizenship to the whole of the European Schengen region for families or entrepreneurs. We'll also look at other options for entrepreneurs wishing to bring business and investment into Portugal. Our expert panelists comprise of professionals in finance, law, visa programs, and investment management, and they will guide you through the discussion around approved golden residency by investment funds, or investing to start a business using one of the golden visas, D2s, entrepreneur visa, and the D8 Digital Nomad option. Whilst the Golden Visa investment is no longer available for property, the real estate market is still strong compared with almost all of the other international real estate markets, including across Europe and in North America. Today, our panelists will share their wealth of experience and insights into optimal strategies for capital security, resident attainment, tax, and unlocking new business and investment opportunities in Portugal. So let's get started. I'm really pleased today to introduce to you our guest panelists. We have Niall McDonald, who's a chartered wealth manager and a partner at Beacon Global Wealth Management, who are based in Portugal. Niall has over a decade of experience, having worked at financial institutes such as Morgan Stanley and the Royal Bank of Scotland, gaining specialist knowledge and expertise in financial planning, investment management, retirement planning, tax, and estate planning. Joining us, we also have Nuno Santos, who is a partner at CMS Law in Lisbon. Nuno has over 15 years of experience providing tax legal advice and has significant expertise in golden visa applications and other related residency programs linked to entrepreneurs and investors. Joining Nuno is João Fial, who is a portfolio manager and senior analyst at Stag Fund Management, who have regulated investment funds that are approved golden visa residency by investment. He has managed more than 20 billion of collateralized asset portfolios within the Euro system and has been directly involved in the issuance of over 15 billion collateralized debt within market and private placement structures. We also have Paul Stannard. Unfortunately, Paul has had issues connecting with us today, so he is joined via a mobile device. Whilst you can't see him on screen, he will be part of the webinar. Paul is chairman and founder of the Portugal's Golden Visa Index and Portugal Pathways. Paul is an international entrepreneur who has supported numerous family office and ultra-high net worth individuals, which has led to nearly 1 billion in private equity investments in the last decade, and previously was the general partner of a Luxembourg alternative investment fund. So I just want to thank you all for joining us today. Just a quick note for everybody watching, today's webinar is being recorded and will be sent out to everyone who's registered in the next 24 hours. So if you're unable to stay on for the duration, which we should be around about an hour, as I said, rest assured that the recording will be sent out to you. Also, a little note for the audience, please don't forget to ask questions, share comments. We'll have a Q&A at the end of the webinar to cover off those questions. If we don't manage to get to all of those questions, normally we get inundated, which is a great thing. We have interactive chats. We will get back to everybody via our website within the next sort of 24, 48 hours, and we'll communicate that out to everybody. And so I just really want to set the scene. As I said, we'll then sort of get into the webinar. With the Golden Visa program in Portugal now focused on regulated and approved investment funds in Portugal, or investing in a business or a startup, after obviously recent changes last year, I'm going to ask Niall, what are the key factors should investors consider when choosing a fund or business to invest in to ensure capital security and balance of risk? Niall, I've got a slide to share, so that will help you with your narrative. Now, give me 2 seconds, and I'll just put that up for you. There we go. So over to you, Niall.
Thank you for the introduction, Steve, and good afternoon, everyone that's on the call. Yeah, just to echo some of the things that you mentioned earlier. Indeed, the Golden Visa, has changed from the more real estate focused situation that it was in to now some of the changes with regards to the individuals looking to invest or indeed start up businesses. I think this is going to result in probably greater demand for those people looking to get assistance certainly when it comes to understanding the nature of the venture capital funds or the private equity funds that they have that are available to those individuals. Some of the specific changes I think will be covered off perhaps later in the webinar, so I won't get too involved or detailed with regards to those. But the point that you mentioned, and certainly going back to the question, it's important that some of the aspects the individual should consider when deciding what to invest in should cover off looking at management team experience, looking at their knowledge, track records, performance, intended returns, nature of the underlying investments that's invested within the fund. And then moving on more specifically to the individual themselves, looking at their investment preferences, risk preferences as well, time horizon and exit strategies, both of the individual and the fund. The slide that you put up, so specifically in relation to that, you can see that there's 3 sort of grades of risk there. We've got the low risk on the left, medium in the middle, and then indeed high risk on the right. So taking that risk preference in isolation, what we would do is work with the client to incorporate some of the factors that I've mentioned earlier to understand where they would fit in within this type of investment. So whether it would be indeed low risk based on those things, medium, or indeed high risk. With regards to the specific amounts that can be invested, again, I'm sure that will be covered off, but for the purpose of the conversation here, 500,000 is the minimum. And again, that can be diversified and spread across funds and indeed risk profiles as well. So I think the key point, and this will probably be a theme from me going forward on the webinar, is that it's important to get individual advice, preferably someone that's independent, so that they can really sense check it, go over it, and tailor it accordingly to the individual. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Steve.
That's great, Niall. Thanks very much. I mean, Nuno and João, anything to come in? Nuno, I'll go to you first.
Look, I agree with Niall. I think that this has been the way that typically the investors have been looking at the different Golden Visa options in terms when it comes to funds. And I would only add that even though, and we're going to talk about that more in a few minutes, but the fact that the real estate is no longer an option, and that was clearly the most used option when the Golden Visa funds became, or when the funds became an eligible way of getting access to the Golden Visa. It is still true, and that is something that we see a lot, that clients, because they don't know that well the Portuguese economy, the Portuguese ecosystem, I think that irrespective of the underlying investments or investment sector, the truth is that we still see clients that are more adverse to risk because they don't know the Portuguese economy. So they like to, irrespective of, as I was saying, of the sector, they like to feel that they can see where the income, or at least where the income is coming from, or at least that the capital has high likelihood of being protected.
Excellent, thank you. João, anything to add on from what Niall and Nuno said there? João, what is it?
Well, thank you for the invitation to be present here. I would probably add here my personal and professional insight regarding this issue. So and focusing more on the investment thesis itself. So ensuring the sweet spot between the capital preservation and taking the right amount of risk, of course, involves several assessments that each investor must do before entering an investment, and that should be aligned with each person's personal and financial goals. As to what regards the private equity and venture capital investment funds, which Stag also manages 15, these are investment structures that by nature carry risk regarding their investment policy and type of underlying assets in which the funds invest. Nevertheless, these are also structures that are heavily regulated by CMVM, that are audited and that are actively managed by a professional team that, of course, follows also internal risk policies over the deployment of the capital in the companies, over the investment policy of each fund, etc. I would mainly highlight the importance of the expertise and the experience, and even the tailor-made risk policy that each fund manager has when assessing, when an investor is assessing an investment in a fund. So as part of their due diligence. So although the past historical returns are not, of course, a guarantee of future ones, an already existing one and sustainable track record provides several insights and valuable ones over consistency in the future. Just to give you a practical example, and I think this could be also useful even for investors to understand a bit the risk policies that are embedded in every decision that us as fund managers perform. So within every investment that a fund is performing, so Stag undergoes several internal procedures that are tailor-made by us. So it's not usually, this is not a standard rule or norm to the whole market. It's a more tailor-made framework that Stag uses. So with each transaction, we do several internal procedures where we ensure that every risk that we take is recognized, accounted, and measured. So, for instance, such procedures comprise legal and financial due diligence before entering in any deal, appraisals over target assets that are done by independent and certified appraisers of the CMVM that are listed in the CMVM, stress testing of business plans, sensitive scenarios, ways in which the fund itself deploys the capital to the companies. So if you deploy into the companies through equity or through shareholder loan, of course we try to, and this goes to even to the capital preservation issue. When the fund deploys capital in the assets, shareholder loans tend to be very secure in the way that you guarantee a lot of things within the period of investment. So you safeguard possible things that if something happens, a turmoil on the markets, that you always have something guaranteed to receive. Okay, so there are several things the fund manager acts. It also reduces concentration. It also plays a crucial role within the reduction of the concentration and exposure with active managed portfolios. So a lot of things that the fund manager can also act and mitigate. There are other several risks, credit risks, interest rates, market trends, but these are also part of investing, and it's part of and should be part of the due diligence of investors.
Great. Well, yeah, that's great insight, Joe. I really appreciate that. Obviously, we know that there are, up to sort of over 40 approved investment funds out there. And to invest, you need to find the right one that's suited to you whilst ensuring that it's regulated. I'm just going to try and bring Paul into the conversation. Paul, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I think we can hear you. I think we can hear. Could I ask you, how would someone go about researching these funds or finding out more about the options available to them?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question because obviously these funds are all regulated and approved for Golden Visa investment, but directly marketing them, they through reverse solicitation, it's really important, that they're not out there over marketing them. So, it's not an easy place to actually research all of the funds. That's why Portugal Pathways recently launched this Portugal Golden Visa Investment Fund Index, so you can look at the high level information, and then we can then introduce you to the relevant fund managers for the relevant funds related to your risk profile, or advice from a professional wealth manager like Niall.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, obviously the index fund itself, we've spent a lot of time researching that, and that is something that will enable individuals, obviously looking into this space, to find everything almost like a one-stop shop. And we will be sharing, obviously, links and downloadable documents for that. So thank you for that, Paul. With the Golden Visa landscape constantly changing, and rules and regulations changing, obviously this space can be a complex one to navigate. Nuno, you have had a lot of experience in the Golden Visa space, as you've been heavily involved in advising many of the regulated Golden Visa funds themselves, as well as the entrepreneurs wishing to come to Portugal and invest. I would be interested in your take on the current scene, as obviously CMS is helping people to get the Golden Visa application and residency part of it, but you also have unique insight on the other side of working with and advising for many of the investment funds in Portugal.
Well, thank you, Steve. In fact, we at CMS, we have been very active in assisting, as you were mentioning, both sides of the fund investment. We have assisted fund managers and general partners in setting up around, I would say, 30 private equity funds over the past 7 years. And on the other hand, we have assisted hundreds of Golden Visa investors that chose the private equity fund as the way to get access to their Golden Visa. And I think it would, just to give you some background, funds became a more attractive Golden Visa eligible option when back in 2017, 2018, the fund investment ticket was reduced from 500,000 euros into 350,000 euros, okay? Which, by the way, it then went up again to 500,000. But back then, because the direct real estate investment was clearly the most popular Golden Visa option, the existing Golden Visa funds were also mostly investing in real estate development projects or in yield-generating assets. In fact, I think that in order to be competitive, the funds would try to argue that the investment into funds was a kind of an indirect real estate investment, but with the advantage of not triggering real estate transfer taxes, as a direct real estate investment does. There is no taxation on the return obtained from a fund, and there was a kind of a dilution of the risk, as the investor is no longer investing in a single asset when it was the case on direct real estate investment, but by investing in a fund that invests in different projects, you would be diluting your risk. So from then onwards, I think that the fund option started to gain a lot of traction, and the fact that the Golden Visa started attracting investors from jurisdictions which are more familiar with fund investments, like the UK or the US, it also gave an extra boost to the fund industry. And as a consequence of that, we started watching and also assisting from our side the creation of funds with different investment strategies, such as pure VC funds, impact funds, funds that invest in startups, ESG funds, renewable energy funds, art funds, and even classic car funds, which I've seen very recently. So if you add to this fact, or if you add to this the fact that under the recent changes to the Golden Visa regime, funds are no longer allowed to invest directly or indirectly in real estate, that explains the reason why the investment strategy of the funds really started focusing on alternative industries, which are no longer, at least mainly, real estate driven. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, I think that irrespective of the sectors in which the funds are investing, I think it shall be noted that most of the Golden Visa investors still tend, as I was saying, to have a more conservative and risk-adverse profile, considering that their main goal is securing the Portuguese passport and preserving the capital invested. So it's true that we have funds with very different underlying investment and investment strategies. But I think that, again, we are still, with some exceptions, we are still attracting clients that they are investing in funds, but mostly because they want the Golden Visa, not because they believe in the Portuguese system.
I understand. That's great insight. And going to you, Niall, what is the sort of main thing that you and your team sort of take into consideration when advising people who are moving or investing in Portugal? As you yourself came to the country and brought a business from the UK and France, what sort of insight that insight would be really interesting. Also, what does your experience of working with sophisticated investors and wealthy expats tell you?
Sure, thanks, Steve. So whether the client is based either in UK or the US or in Europe, for example, in France, the first question that I always ask is always the same. So in that case, I'll talk about Portugal, and it would be, well, why come to Portugal? The answer, which typically revolves around the same thing. So Portugal being a safe, secure, affordable country, high quality of life. It's got good infrastructure, good healthcare, good education. Maybe not so today, but importantly, a really nice climate as well. So what I'm kind of driving at there is mostly it's lifestyle choices. So where the clients or the individual tends to relocate to, for me, the most important thing is it has to be driven from a lifestyle perspective. Clearly, there's other incentives behind that, some of which I'll come on to, and of course, Golden Visa and venture capital and different private equity funds are some of which. But for me, when I speak with my clients, the most important thing is always about lifestyle. So that's usually where I come from. The second thing that Portugal really has to offer is the special tax regime that has also changed over the years, known as the non-habitual residence, or the NHR, which some people may or may not be involved with or indeed have heard of. That's played a very important role, certainly since the financial crisis and bringing money and resources and people to Portugal. Indeed, it still continues to play an important aspect as well, with some of the changes that have gone in. So those two factors combined, which were for me the drivers of coming here, was really the main decision, with a lot of other people as well relocating to Portugal. So my job at Beacon is really to help those people either navigate around planning when their NHR would end, the NHR, non-habitual residence, being valid for 10 years upon entry. So my job certainly involves looking at ways in which to manage their investments, whether we're targeting a specific growth, or whether we're looking at specific funds, some of which Zhao's mentioned again, but also doing this in a very tax efficient way. So in terms of what we do for our clients that come to Portugal, it's very much, firstly, lifestyle driven, but then secondly, looking at investment management, and they're tax efficient and trying to marry the two up together.
That's great. That's great insight. Like you said, it comes down to lifestyle choices, the absolute number one. Thanks for that, Niall. Zhao, for investors seeking a more hands-off approach, how do Golden Visa investment funds operate, and what level of transparency, regulation and reporting, as well as control, can investors expect when it comes to residency by investment in Portugal?
So this criteria of transparency, regulation and reporting basically acts together across the whole market of investment funds in Portugal. So in regards to Golden Visa investors and their investment in the funds, they can already expect a high level of transparency, regulation, and even oversight, not only by the relevant regulated entities such as CMVM, but also by even the fund manager in what regards to transparency and reporting. So just breaking this basically into regarding regulation and transparency, of course, CMVM is a regulatory body that is responsible for supervising the Portuguese securities market, where it is included the investment funds. So the new asset regime that every investment fund needs to comply entered in force last year, and it covers a lot of aspects and several ones about the fund structures and operations, basically to ensure more investor protection, market integrity, and also transparency. Within these regulations, you have the overall framework and governance of the fund, the investment strategy, the fees, amongst others, that need to be complied and stated within the management regulations of each fund. So Stag works closely with also top law firms. CMS firm Nuno is also a good example. Since the inception of the management regulations to the commercialization of the fund to our investors, to ensure that the financial product that we offer to our investor is fully compliant and supported by all the regulations in place. Regarding reporting, this I would drive more to the fund manager side, so to Stag, because although every fund manager of each fund is obliged to regularly report to investors fund performance, the extent to which they do it differs from fund manager to fund manager. So on a practical level, and just to give you the Stag's example, this is something fundamental that we are continuously improving. And that compared to even the market practice, we go the extra mile to ensure that all investors across all funds that we manage are able to continuously monitor the performance and the progress of the investment that they do in whatever fund they do it. Besides the general meeting of the unit holders that usually occurs around this time. So, for instance, as an additional reporting and transparency that we urge and that we do with our clients, we provide periodic newsletters to investors with all the financial statements, performance reports, updates, and the current investments for each fund we manage. Furthermore, we set up around 1 to 2 webinars a year where we present live to the investors an update over the financials and the underlying investments. So we incentivize the discussion with our clients, with our investors, and clarify any potential questions that they have at that time. And we still have a lot of several one-on-one meetings with investors at a particular time, want to know more about their investment, how is it going. So we do a lot of work on that part.
That again, great insight, and I want to thank you, obviously, Niall, Nuno, and João, for that insight into obviously the Golden Visa. I'd like to focus a bit more on one other visa option, which is the D2, also known as the Entrepreneur's Visa. Nuno, I want to come to you first. Could you elaborate on the requirements and the potential benefits of this particular visa option compared to the Golden Visa Residency by Investment Program? Particularly for individuals seeking to establish or invest in Portuguese businesses?
Steve, I think that in fact that's the main question, because when we are discussing the differences between a Golden Visa and another kind of, such as the D2 visa, the D7 visa, I think the first question is, what is the level of commitment that we are effectively giving to the Portuguese, to Portugal? Because I think that the Golden Visa itself requires a financial commitment, because it requires an effective investment into a Portuguese private equity fund or a Portuguese business. But on the other hand, it only requires to be in Portugal on average 7 days per year. Whereas the other kinds of visa, namely the D2, do not require an effective financial investment, but they require a commitment in terms of permanence in Portugal, because any kind of visa, which is not the Golden Visa, which is an exceptional way of getting access to a Portuguese residence permit, requires you to either spend 6 months in a row in Portugal or to spend an aggregate 8 months every year in Portugal. So that's the first question that applicants need to make to themselves, is whether they are able to commit 6 months of their year, or even 8 months of their year, to staying or in terms of permanence in Portugal. So that's the main question that needs to be answered before the decision on whether we go for a golden visa or any kind of visa. Specifically when it comes to D2s, which is also referred as the entrepreneur visa. And as you were saying, it applies to individuals who wish to engage in investment activities in Portugal. And in particular, the D2 visa applies to entrepreneurs who want to open a business in Portugal, to entrepreneurs who already have a business in their country of origin and would like to open a branch in Portugal, or even to self-employed individuals that wish to have a kind of a liberal activity also in Portuguese territory. So I think that obviously in terms of requirements as well, the D2 applicant is required to present a declaration on explaining what he intends to develop in which activity does he wish to develop in Portugal, and he should also prepare a business plan which should prove that the business will thrive and lead to economic growth in Portugal. But I think we have the D2 is obviously an option, and we have been doing a lot for our clients. The D7 is also a kind of visa that applicants are using a lot because we are talking about passive income, and we have a very relevant number of clients that have at least a portion of their wealth comes from passive income, such as dividends, rental income from properties that they have abroad. And the other visa that we have been seeing a lot is also the digital nomad visa, which again I think that is something that may make sense again for people that are willing to commit time to Portugal. So just to sum up, I think that, as I was saying, the main question is to assess whether the plan is to effectively relocate to Portugal or only to invest in Portugal in order to secure in the future a Portuguese passport. In the first scenario, and depending on the specific situation of the applicant, the D2, the digital nomad, or a D7 shall probably be more suitable. In the second scenario, the golden visa is clearly the most appropriate option. So I think that. So I think that this is the key question that we need to focus on before taking a decision on which kind of visa do we want to apply for.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there's something that fits everybody, isn't there? So thank you for that, Nuno. Paul, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm still with you.
Excellent, excellent. So, Paul, as someone who's worked closely with numerous family offices and ultra-high net worth individuals, as well as sophisticated and institutional investors, what are the common denominators that you see most often when people are considering investing in Portugal?
I think what Nuno said earlier is true. That when they're investing in Golden Visa, a lot of the time they're less, they're a little bit more risk averse. But it does depend on the profile. We've got ultra high net worth, we've got family offices that as a proportion of their wealth, 500,000 is not the main driver. It's they're looking for safety and security. They're looking for a different view of their investment portfolio, so it's not just North American facing or Asia facing. They want to have that access and freedom of movement that the Golden Visa gives them across Europe, but also to have investments in the region that they're going to be spending time with family and putting back something into the country. And there are also a number of funds there that are actually approved, that are actually a second or third time fund managers that have really had success. There's been some great companies that have spun out from Portugal and ended up in Silicon Valley in recent years. So there are opportunities to invest in talent and the future, as well as those going the safe option just to get the residency.
Thank you, Paul. Actually, I want to shoot another question back to you, and this one's actually a three-parter. And after you've given us your insight, I'd like to push the same questions out to the rest of the panel. The first part is we are in an increasingly remote entrepreneurial working world. How do you foresee the D8 Digital Nomad Visa shaping the future work in Portugal and bring in more productivity investment. So that's the first part. The second part is, will we see a growing number of highly skilled workers relocating to Portugal using the D8 visa, or taking advantage of the new NHR 2.0 tax regime that's going to replace obviously the existing NHR tax regime? And if you can answer the third bit for me as well. So finally, what impact do you think this will have on the Portuguese economy now that we have a new government in place in Portugal, obviously following last month's election? So hopefully you took all that on board and can go for it.
Yeah, well, there was a lot there, Steve.
There was.
So I'll do my best.
Yeah.
So solve the world, the universe, and everything besides. In reality, what we're seeing at Portugal Pathways and through, our private wealth networks and institutional investors, that, in the last, almost since the financial crisis back in 2007, Portugal has gone from a place that was struggling to a place that has been doing well in a lot of ways, and so in relation to the D8, there is a great educated young talent in Portugal, and there's more talent coming from abroad that is adding a great mix, and that's happening in Lisbon, that's happening in North Portugal, in places like Braga and Porto, and even spilling out into the Algarve. So, I think, because of what it brings, access to the whole of Europe, and it brings, 300 days of sunshine and working with other talented people in a very tax-efficient environment. I think the D8, the D2 visa aimed at entrepreneurs, the Golden Visa, and the Digital Nomad Visa are all going to combine to continue that trajectory for Portugal.
That's great. Nuno, Joe, any thoughts on that?
Look, I agree. I tend to agree with you, Paul. I think that obviously, being myself a tax lawyer, I think that as you were mentioning, the tax regime, the NHR regime, and now the new, let's call it NHR 2.0, or the new Impatriate tax regime, they are obviously two instruments that have been very useful to attracting entrepreneurs, and not only to Portugal. So, and it's true that sometimes if we are doing our job properly, when I mean we tax lawyers, probably the client will come and not pay that much taxes in Portugal in terms of personal income tax, because they have been properly advised before they moved. But the truth is that we are talking about people that have a major contribution to the Portuguese economy. They employ people, they buy houses, they set up companies, they invest in funds. So it's clearly people that we want to keep attracting to Portugal. And I'm a bit concerned about, let's say, the end of the NHR regime, because I think that while the NHR regime could be sold as a product to the global market, since it could be beneficial for everyone, irrespective of their income flow, namely for retired people, pensionists, this NHR 2.0 is much more restrictive, as it implies applicants to develop specific activities having Portuguese companies as their employers or clients. I think that the new Impatriate regimes, just to be clear, just to give some background to people, it requires applicants to obtain Portuguese-sourced employment or self-employment income, which needs to derive from roles like teaching in higher education, scientific research, position in technology or startups, highly qualified professions in companies with significant investment applications, or companies that most of their turnover comes from exports. So it's very, very restrictive, whereas the NHR was it would basically fit everyone. So it had some weaknesses, but again, if properly structured before relocating, those weaknesses could be eliminated. So I think that this new regime is much more restrictive. And there's an additional issue, because all this kind of activities that are now or will now be eligible for this new regime, they still require additional clarification from the Portuguese authorities. So all of them depend of additional, like what we call ministerial ordinances that will clarify how do applicants can effectively apply for this new NHR. So not only it is more restrictive, as at this specific stage, we don't even know exactly how do we qualify for this. So, which is a pity, because if this would be a bit less restrictive, bear in mind that this new regime is even more attractive, or could be more attractive to when compared to the NHR, because the NHR, and let me give you the example of capital gains on the sale of financial assets located abroad. That was the perfect example where someone that becomes NHR and has capital gains on the sale of stocks located abroad would, in principle, and obviously for disregarding some exceptions, would in principle be liable to tax in Portugal at the 28% rate. And under the new regime, if you are lucky enough to qualify for one of these activities, the good thing is that any income that you receive from abroad, capital gains, even salaries or self-employment income coming from abroad, interest, rents, all of that will be fully exempt from tax in Portugal. And in the NHR, that could potentially not be the case. But again, what I feel as a tax lawyer is that the NHR, I could easily and openly talk about the NHR to a room of people that I would for sure find people that would be interested in getting the NHR. And now I need to find people that are very specific in terms of the activities that they carry out. And that is clearly a big weakness. And I think that by being a weakness, I think it would obviously limit the level of attraction that Portugal has.
Thanks for that, Nuno. Joe, have you anything to add on that sort of subject?
I think already Paul and Nuno, the experts in this type of situation, already addressed everything. I would just say that Portugal historically, and even in the last years, has already demonstrated its commitment to supporting, to even incentivize even more these foreign investment regimes that is being applying. So even the Golden Visa and the D8 continuously reflect how Portugal is trying to attract new talent, new capital, which is the most relevant, and to try to become Portugal a more attractive destination for entrepreneurs mainly. And you can see it through the already increasing number of foreigners that are relocating to Portugal to work remotely, and that contribute a lot to the country's economy through the constitution of companies, fostering innovation in several sectors, creating wealth. So I would just add as a conclusion that even now with the current government in place, and as we move forward in 2024, our expectation is that even the government, as it is in their agenda, is to have a more expansion of the current offer, and also to further new regime initiatives to capture more and incentivize more foreign investment.
Let's hope that they have enough strength to do that. Let's see.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everybody for that insight. We're going to swing back round to sort of golden visas. Nuno, now that the golden visa program doesn't allow funds to invest directly or indirectly in real estate, what is your take on the kind of investments that are allowed in this space, or not, as the case may be?
That's a relevant question. And I think that in order to answer that question, I think it's important to note that the limitation that you were mentioning on the real estate investments resulted from a legislation package which was approved end of last year, which called More Housing Bill, which basically foresees several measures aimed at fighting Portugal's housing crisis. And this was the bill that eliminated not only the direct real estate investment as a golden visa option, but also, as you were mentioning, it added the limitation on the private equity funds investment not being aimed at real estate. And the truth is that there is still a high level of uncertainty regarding how will the immigration authorities interpret what is deemed as a direct or indirect real estate investment. And what we understand, or what we believe, is that, and also considering that this measure was included in a More Housing Bill, so it has a specific target, I think that the rationale behind this limitation was to disallow speculative real estate investment, which would, in theory, increase the housing prices and contribute to the existing crisis and increase the housing prices. And contribute to the existing crisis in this sector. So what we and there's another thing that is also common, in our opinion. A pure real estate investment is an investment that is targeting to generate income under the form of capital gains or rental income. So our opinion has been that the funds that previously existed, that were investing, for example, in real estate development projects, or that were buying commercial assets to do long-term lease agreements with supermarket chains and all of that, I think that those are the kind of funds or investment strategies that are no longer allowed under this new limitation. On the other hand, any fund that invests in an operating business, which is carried out in a real estate property, such as hotels, schools, hospitals, factories, in our opinion, that cannot be deemed as a direct or an indirect real estate investment. So I think that the triggering aspect to determine whether or not it is real estate investment or not, I think it's mostly on whether the activity is an operating activity and whether the income itself is also an operating income and not capital gains and rental income. And when I mean capital gains or rental income, it doesn't mean that I cannot have, if I found the possibility to sell one of the assets that I own, in which, for example, I develop a tourism activity, that doesn't prevent me to sell and to assess a capital gain. But my strategy is not to buy and sell real estate or to buy and rent real estate. I'm buying real estate or I'm using real estate because I'm developing an operating business in that real estate. So this is clearly our opinion, and I think that the market as a whole has this opinion. But obviously, when you look at the law states that funds cannot invest directly or indirectly in real estate. So we are all a little bit worried on how will the bright minds of AIMA look at this. But again, I think that we have very solid grounds, at least, to argue that, as I was saying, an operating business is not real estate. Because at the end of the day, just to give an example, I couldn't invest, for example, in any company because all companies have or may potentially own their headquarters. And that would be a real estate investment. And obviously that doesn't make sense. And again, bearing in mind the spirit of the limitation and the fact that it was introduced by the More Housing Bill, I don't think that this is what they would be targeting to limit. So this is our opinion. I don't know, João, if you agree with this.
Yeah, I say, João, obviously with the man with his ear to the ground, what are your interpretations? I don't know if João can hear us. I don't know if he's lost his microphone.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Oh, perfect. Yes, I think we already covered basically the ground. So, and I would just focus more on the operation, because usually that's the question that we've been having even with our investors, direct or indirect relation or exposure to real estate. And this goes along with what Nuno is saying. So basically, our assessment is also, even when frameworking all our management regulations, is that of course I give you a practical example for you to produce any type of objects, screws, whatever. You need a factory to do it. So you cannot perform your core business. Its operations is not owning or reselling or selling a power plant or or real estate or any type of real estate development. So our framework contemplates, and we also ensure our investors in that regard with obtaining legal opinions that with top law firms also that say and comfort the future investors regarding the eligibility for the Golden Visa. I think that's the main question: is this assessment or not of the direct or indirect exposure to real estate?
Lovely, Brent. Thank you for that insight. Paul, just double checking you're still with us.
I am, Steve.
You are.
Hear me?
We can hear you.
Hanging on in there.
You're hanging on in. Good man. Paul, given your work with the Golden Visa Fund Index, what trends are you observing in the Golden Visa investment market, and what advice would you give to potential high value investors? I think we might have lost Paul. Oh, he's back.
Cut across me.
Oh, I do apologize. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the wonders of modern technology. Paul is back in the room. So, Paul, would you like to repeat the question, or?
Please, Steve. Yeah.
Yeah. Bear with me 2 seconds. So, yeah, the question was really about trends, Paul. You know, what are you seeing at the moment in terms of the trends within sort of the Golden Visa, and what kind of advice would you be giving to investors?
Well, the first thing is it's not just about the investment. It's to a lot of these people, they're coming because they want that freedom of access and movement. And that's a major driver of their decision making. And on the tax side, the other thing that we're seeing with Golden Visa is they're not all necessarily coming because they want to change the tax status, because some of them have got very complex income and assets internationally, and that's really why you've got to get the right advisors. You know, you need to have somebody that understands the Portuguese tax side of things and their own home country. And then having wealth advisors like Niall's company or others that basically can navigate that with you and the tax advisors. And then look at your risk profile and work with, you know, fund managers to find the right opportunity for you. But people are looking for more sustainable investments. They're looking for widen their geographical footprint because, you know, the world's changing, and, you know, a lot of places, I think this year there's going to be more sort of elections, and most of them are going to be fairly toxic elections around the world, and that makes people with wealth feel unsecure. So Portugal is a safe place, and it's an area that we're seeing from the UK, the US, Canada, South Africa, Hong Kong, Singapore, Israel even, and they want all of what Portugal can bring.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm really conscious of the time. Obviously, the chat is flowing, and there's lots of great insight. But also, obviously, within the chat for the webinar itself, obviously, we're getting lots of questions. And I'd like to sort of dedicate the next sort of 10 minutes, 15 minutes before we wrap up to sort of answering some of those questions. As I said before, if we don't get back to everybody, which quite clearly we won't do in the next sort of 10 to 15 minutes, our team will endeavour to come back to everybody with an answer, obviously, to those key questions within the next few days. So again, what we'd like to say is, if there's anything specific that in the audience that you want to ask, you know, please reach out to Portugal Pathways, and we can arrange one-to-one discovery call with any of the guys that you see on today's webinar. So I see we have a couple of questions in the chat about tax status in Portugal, and any updates in terms of what's going on with regards to replacement of the NHR tax regime. Often this is referred to as son of NHR or NHR 2.0. This particular question is from Carol, and she is asking, are there any benefits to having my tax status in Portugal over the US or the UK? As my husband is British and we're both considering the Golden Visa and where to pay tax. Obviously, it's tax related, Nuno. Whether you can take this question, that would be great. And also, Nuno, I believe we've got a slide which will just sort of back up what you're going to be sort of referencing. So I'm just going to find that slide. Here it is. Nuno, over to you.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that the question is obviously relevant, and to be honest, and as I've already mentioned in this on this webinar, we have been much more focused in trying to make sure that clients potentially comply with grandfathering provisions that allows them to benefit from the former NHR regime, than really to allow them to be able to apply for this new NHR 2.0 regime. Because as I've already pointed out, the truth is that it's very specific in terms of the activities that will be developed. And on top of that, there is not yet any clarification from the authorities on how can you apply for that NHR 2.0. I think that, and I've mentioned this several times, I think that the biggest hope that I have in this NHR 2.0 is focused in Madeira and the Azores, which are the two Portuguese archipelagos. Because Madeira and the Azores have some level of tax independence or autonomy towards the mainland, and both regions will be allowed to define which are the activities that may benefit from this NHR 2.0. And because I was born and raised in Madeira, so I tend to know quite well the way of thinking in Madeira. So I would suspect that if you become Portuguese tax resident, but based in Madeira, I think that the likelihood of you being able to find one of these activities that you would meet and allow you to benefit from this NHR 2.0 is much more likely. So my recommendation and most of my calls with clients has been to try and see whether, and sometimes they don't even know, if they somehow meet one of the grandfathering conditions that allows them to become Portuguese tax resident in 2024 and still benefit from the previous NHR regime. Because again, I think that, and looking at your specific situation, I think that when you look at the previous NHR regime, if you are based in the UK, for example, and you have a UK company, and myself and Niall, we share a lot of clients that are in this specific circumstance. For example, if you are a Portuguese tax resident and you own a company in the UK, for example, if your activity in Portugal is basically none, and you live out of dividends that you would receive from your UK company, then those dividends would be fully exempt from tax in Portugal. And on top of that, with the advantage of being also withholding tax exempt in the UK, which means that wherever the corporation tax would apply to your company in the UK, that would be your effective and final taxation. So I believe that the Portuguese tax system, and again, with some level of uncertainty in respect of this NHR 2.0, but if you can still probably discover that you meet one of the grandfathering conditions, I think that the previous NHR regime could easily meet your expectations and allow you to have or to benefit from a very tax efficient framework in Portugal. So, and I think that on this slide that Steve had, Steve, can you just put it again?
Yep, apologies, yep.
So you can see, and I've mentioned that already today, you can see how limited and how specific the kind of activities are. So it's not easy for a regular person to fall within one of these activities. So that's why I'm saying that in respect of the NHR 2.0, and we still don't know whether the new government will do something about this, and I still hope so, but I would tend to say that we would be better off if we can find a way to still benefit from the previous NHR regime, and I'm more than happy to discuss this in a call with you and see if there is something that we can still find that would allow you to benefit from the previous NHR regime.
Brilliant. That's great insight. Thank you very much. I've got a question here from Helen. And she's asking, well, she's saying, in your opinion, what is the single most important factor an investor looking at a Golden Visa residency by investment should consider? So I'm going to go to Zhao for that one.
Yes, thank you for the question. So amongst other that are equally relevant, I would probably emphasize to future investors the relevance in the selection of the fund manager and the respective funds in which you will be doing the investment. So be sure that when you assess the investment policy of the fund, be confident that you are investing in a sector which you already previously assessed and did your personal due diligence or throughout any advisory. And at the same time, try to always benefit from sectors in which Portugal excels, such as energy, farmland, hospitality. These are strong sectors that offer strong capabilities, even in terms of returns and capital preservation. Even throughout market turmoils, our sectors are very strong and robust in their fundamentals. I think that would be the most important thing.
Niall, have you got anything to sort of add off the back of Zhao's insight?
Yeah, sure. So I know Zhao makes a very good point in regards to the underlying management and the underlying funds as well. That's in the Golden Visa investment funds. For me, it was something as well that Nuno said earlier around the time aspect. So there's many different visas that people can use to come into Portugal. But the Golden Visa is quite unique, and whereby there's the 7-day minimum sort of requirement for time. So the purpose on moving to Portugal maybe is more of a long term, looking at citizenship over the sort of 5 years, then the Golden Visa may be a good option for that, because therefore you don't need to, again, something that Paul said, you don't need to mess around with your own existing tax situation. It might be quite complicated. There might be things going on there that you're better off where you are for other reasons. So yeah, for me, an important aspect would be, again, go back to lifestyle, where you want to be, and then the reasons that would accommodate that.
Brilliant. Thank you, Niall. Obviously we've got, I'm, again, keep going back to it, but I'm conscious of time, but I want to get to a couple more questions before we sort of wrap up. One for you here, Paul, one from Jeremy. Jeremy's asking, who do I reach out to about applying or finding out more about the Golden Visa? So, Paul, can you take that one for me?
Can you hear me okay, Steve?
Yeah, I think we can just about hear you, Paul. Yeah, you sort of moved further away.
Can you hear now?
Yes, that's better.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if they go through our website, make contact with us, we can share all the guides. We can give them information on our Portuguese Golden Visa Index. It's where they can look at the different type of options and investments. But ultimately, it's having the right people on those discovery calls once they reach out with us. And I can't emphasize more that make sure you have people that really understand this space when seeking advice.
Absolutely. And we're getting again, we're getting a few questions around costs and time frames. So we have a question here from Anthony, who wants to know about additional legal or immigration costs and the timeline specifically. And we've got another question also come in about timelines as well from Amanda. So in terms of timelines, what are the timelines for securing a Golden Visa and receiving full citizenship at the end of the 5 years? I'm going to turn to Nuno and Zhao. And Zhao, I'm going to turn to you first. Again, we've got a little slide that we can put up, which will just illustrate some of those timelines. But if you want to sort of talk to that, that would be great.
Here, I would also try to basically explain a bit the onboarding process that Stag itself has. So we see the investment onboarding process in a very straightforward manner. Firstly, we always advise the client to appoint a legal advisor to assist and support with the whole process. With regard to steps, these are pretty simple. So obtain a tax number, which is quick, usually takes a day, and deal with the bank account opening process. That if done remotely takes 2 to 3 weeks. But if some clients come to Portugal, this process may be quicker. Usually, it's the process that takes a bit more time. In parallel, you have Stag's onboarding. So Stag will also combine a set of KYC and subscription documents, pretty much digital. So we already make use of DocuSign for the whole process. And from experience, this shall take around 2 to 2.5 weeks. But it's important to note that it all depends on how fast the investor is providing the information required. So please note that we already had clients that came here to the office, brought all required documentation, and onboarded in the same day. So we have several scenarios. But basically, with the bank accounts operational and tax compliance already completed, the client is then requested to proceed with the investment and the transfer. So the transfer the money from his bank account overseas to his bank account in Portugal, and from his bank account in Portugal to the fund's bank account. Once the money is credited to the fund's bank account, Stag then issues a statement attesting the completion of its investment. And then this is the statement that the investors use to submit to the immigration authorities. I think that all process, we take a reasonable estimate that all process take 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how fast the bank account is open. But yes, it's usually pretty standard now, becoming standard and fast.
Nuno?
Steve, if you allow me, just to add one thing. So obviously, João was explaining the onboarding into the fund, but obviously after that, after the investment has been effectively made, and before of that, the client needs to open a Portuguese bank account, transfer the money from abroad into the Portuguese bank account, and from the Portuguese bank account, the amount is deployed into the fund. And so, as João was mentioning, the fund manager Stag will issue a statement attesting that specific person invested €500,000 into a specific fund, or more than one fund. And then, typically, the lawyer who is assisting the Golden Visa applicant will make the submission of the Golden Visa application in the immigration authorities portal. So this was, and then the immigration authorities pre-approve the request, and then there is an appointment being scheduled to collect the biometrics of the client. And to be honest, ever since we had the pandemics, this has been taking ages. And this was a big issue because the 5 years that we mentioned that are the timing that you need to get the Portuguese passport would only start ticking when you would have the physical Golden Visa cards with you. And to be honest, that was taking around 2 years. So something which was supposed to take around 5 years for you to be able to apply for the Portuguese citizenship was taking around 7 years. The good news is that very recently, there was a change in the law under which the 5 years start ticking not from the date where the applicant got his Golden Visa card, but from the day he made the Golden Visa application. And which means that we are now really targeting 5 years or something close to 5 years in order to be able to apply for the Portuguese passport. And that was, let's say, a game changer, because now we are really being credible when we say that we allow Golden Visa investors to potentially become Portuguese citizens 5 years after their investment was made.
Excellent. So patience is still required, but not maybe as much.
But not that much patience.
Not as much patience. Well, again, I want to thank our panelists and our audience today. Quite clearly, we haven't been able to get through all of the questions, but as promised, We will get back with answers within obviously the next 24 or 48 hours. And again, if you want to arrange a one-to-one call with either ourselves or any of our partners, our panelists, please obviously visit our website at www.portugalpathways.io. As I said, a watch back of the entire webinar will be sent round to everybody again within the next 24 hours. But before we go, I'd just like to go around the room and ask each panelist really just to leave the audience with one key short takeaway that obviously for those that are considering, you know, a golden visa as an option. Niall, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Steve, for chairing the webinar today. So the final points really from me covers two things. One, if you're coming to Portugal, and two, if you're already here. So if you are considering moving to Portugal, then for me, it's really important that you do your research. That involves working with sort of advisors, lawyers, and accountants that can sort of guide you and really steer you away from any pitfalls, which are sadly all too easy to make when you're moving to a new country and when you're moving to a place where it's not your native language. So the security and peace of mind which comes from having that team of experts in their chosen field would sort of pay for any fees alone, just from having the comfort of knowing that you're in the right hands. If you're already in Portugal, then I think it's looking at ways in which to improve your financial circumstances. So therefore, you know, I would encourage you to make an inquiry with a no obligation discussion. We're really trying to get to understand your situation. You know, one things that we haven't talked upon is some of the areas that my company would look to invest on. One of which is the Golden Visa, but there are other products and other suitable means available for other people in those regards. So yeah, if you're already here, it would be to reach out and look at see if there's ways your situation can be improved.
Nuno?
Thank you, Steve. I think I would go back to what I've mentioned already, which is when deciding to apply for a Portuguese visa, I think that we need, or the client or the applicant needs to decide on whether he really wants to relocate to Portugal. And in that case, I don't think that the Golden Visa is probably the most suitable option, because it still requires a financial investment that may be unnecessary. So if the plan is to effectively relocate to Portugal, I would recommend clients to look at the different D visas that we have available. If the plan is to, as Steve was mentioning, and Paul also, the fact that you want to have, let's say, a plan B with a Portuguese visa or a Portuguese passport, then I think that, and at the same time, you are not yet planning to effectively relocate to Portugal, I think that the Golden Visa is clearly the best option. Just on another note, regarding tax, it's true that we have the NHR 2.0 starting this year, but the level of uncertainty that the regime still has makes us at least try in the first place to consider whether the client could potentially still meet one of the grandfathering provisions that would allow him or her to still benefit from the previous NHR regime. So I would invite you, if you are in one of these situations, to talk to us, and we will try to assist you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nuno. And Zhao.
Yes, so thank you all also for assisting the webinar. I would just make a statement that following up uncertainty that all the Golden Visa program had last year, we are now in a situation where with a government change, even considering what Nuno said before about the effective power that this government in place has to basically proceed with all the things that they want to change. I think we have a very positive political climate to proceed and to even to further down our investment policies and foreign investment deployments that we wish to accomplish. Of course, we at Stag as fund manager are also available to also address any question that can arise within any possible investment.
Brilliant. Paul, I'm going to leave the last word to you, as long as you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you, Steve.
Excellent, excellent.
My final point is, Portugal's a wonderful place in a very strange world that we live in. And if you're looking for investment, it's a place where there is talent, that there are funds out there that basically, are offering, really strong propositions. And I think the Golden Visa option is going to be a strong one for many wealthy families and family offices for years to come.
Brilliant. Thank you. Well, it leaves me to say thank you to everybody. Thank you to our panelists, Nuno, Niall, João, and Paul, for your time and your insight. And obviously, a big thank you to our audience. As I said, we apologise we couldn't get round to every single question today, but we will get back to you. And it just leaves me to say that our next webinar, which is on Portugal's property market, is on the 28th of May. So again, if this is of interest, we'd love to see you again at the end of May. Just leaves me to say thank you very much to everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day, and please take care. Bye-bye.